Welcome to the Near Memo, a weekly conversation about search, social, and commerce. What happened, why it matters, and the implications for local.
Okay, welcome to episode 32 of the Near Memo with David, Mike, and me. We're here as always to talk about the latest in local commerce, social media, and search. And as always, there's more things to talk about than we have time to talk about. But we picked out a number of things I think that are interesting that are going on today, and will show up in the Friday's newsletter. I was going to say something about depending on when you're listening to this, but that doesn't matter. Okay. All right. So I think, David, you were going to lead us off with some discussion about some insights from a McKinsey survey about B2B buying.
Yeah, there was a McKinsey survey. It's actually a year old at this point. It was actually August of 2020, or maybe it was October of 2020. But I don't think that the insights from it are necessarily wrong. The gist is that most people expect the sort of during COVID buying behaviors for B2B buyers anyway to more or less continue when the pandemic is over. And a couple of really interesting findings from my standpoint anyway, and relevant to companies that are selling to small businesses, obviously. That's why this article sort of caught my attention. The first was that ordering and reordering, basically 35% of businesses prefer self-service as opposed to talking to either a remote salesperson or a field salesperson. Field sales, is a pretty strong minority in terms of preference, something around 20% kind of across the board, which also kind of ties in with a lot of stuff you've written, Greg, about just people's, lack of interest in sort of face-to-face risk during COVID. But most people expect that the habits that have formed over the last year and a half in the B2B space will sort of continue. And then the one that really caught my attention as someone who works, doing product at a B2B company, Demand Science, the pretty staggering to me, actually, that up to 32% of B2B buyers were willing to spend between $50,000 and up to $500,000 without actually talking to a salesperson, end-to-end digital self-service. And that was just a much higher number of a purchase that people are willing to do without talking to someone in sales. And it certainly strikes me that, if you've operated on a not necessarily a product-led or product-first model with your software business to date, you might be missing out on 32% of your audience. I mean, a $500,000 contract is not exactly a typical SMB level contract. And so if you're under that amount, which I assume is basically everyone on this podcast, and you don't have some kind of freemium or free trial product experience that people can take before talking to a salesperson, you're potentially missing out on a huge chunk of your potential customer base.
So was the sample entirely small businesses, or was it B2B buyers sort of?
No, B2B buyers generally. But that's what I'm saying. I mean, if anything, it skews larger businesses are also willing to make pretty large purchases without talking to a salesperson. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I think the one of the takeaways for me that's interesting is sort of the fact that fewer and fewer people want to talk to salespeople, sort of in general. I mean, I think your product-led growth point is very well taken. People want to engage with the thing that they're buying, and they want to see it for themselves rather than hearing a bunch of benefit statements. But it goes back in my mind to some of those earlier surveys that we saw from CallRail and Constant Contact about how what small businesses want is partnerships with people that are going to help them, not to be pitched. Right? They don't want to be pitched, and I think so much of sales is still stuck. You have everybody sort of saying, "Oh, we do consultative sales, and the salesperson has got to be a partner and all of that." But I think there's still a lot of sales that are very much about pitching and pushing, and that people just don't want to have to deal with that at all. I mean, I think that's one of the sort of superficial takeaways, perhaps, from this is that you're so much effort is expended in sales, but it's comparatively worth less and less, I think, in the whole buying cycle.
Right, and something like account experience or customer experience is worth much more. And should this theoretically, these kinds of reports should be encouraging a shift of internal resources, both in terms of dollars spent and sort of where people are allocated more onto the customer support and service side, as opposed to the pure sort of traditional pitching sales side. Yeah.
So, Mike, you wanted to say something. I don't want to cut you off, but
just that the corollary is also customer success. That this support institution needs to be able to help people find the next value in the product as well, and that may be an upsell, it may not be, but it requires selling of some sort in that organization as well. So it requires a shift in how businesses are run. I mean, we've experienced this with the software products we use this week, where we totally onboarded by ourselves. We've been using it for 32 episodes. They upgraded to V2O. A bunch of things broke, and we can't get support. It's very frustrating. And if they had said, "Oh, if you just buy this next level up, you would have got support," I would have bought the next level up, but I couldn't. I bought the next level up, but I still didn't get support. So the point is that I think that you have to rethink how to fill customers' needs, not just from a support point of view, but a product point of view as well. And that may include some sales on that side of the house.
Well, I mean, this
should include sales.
This is the conventional wisdom that you have to be customer centric. This is sort of cliche marketing language, but too many organizations don't really take it to heart. They use the rhetoric, but they don't really think about what it means. I can tell you, just from an overall experience standpoint, so we've got an internal group called Solutions Engineering, which is not customer success exactly. It sits somewhere between product and sales, kind of. I'm not on that team, so I'm probably not doing a good job representing it. Crystal Tang is on that team, and I know that every time they involve one of those people in a sales call, the success rates go way up because they know the product and they can really provide useful information. Whereas very often the sales rep is just reading a script or some version of a script, and they don't have a lot of product knowledge, and they're not really there to help the customer. I'm not talking about Uberall now. I'm talking about just in general. They're really there to make a quota, right, or whatever their particular objective is. And so, and reports like the McKinsey report are interesting, but they don't change culture. That's the problem. Is that you can read a report, you can say, well, that's interesting, and then you go back to your organization, and everything is the way that it's always been.
Right, but it also opens the door for startups who don't have the legacy sort of company baggage or inertia that's preventing this kind of mindset. So interesting report, and I think equally valid and unfortunately equally valid in September of 2021 as it was September of 2020. So
yeah, well, or not, unfortunately, as the case may be. It reflects reality, to people. Right. Okay, so speaking of change or the lack thereof, Mike, you wanted to talk about a recent report about. See, I'm getting better and better at these segues.
Amazing segue, one of your best.
A report from about mobile payments adoption, and sort of a surprising finding that it wasn't as high as maybe people would have expected from COVID.
Yeah, the report's at payments.com, and it focuses on ApplePay particularly, and they note that 6% of iPhone users have opted into ApplePay and use it regularly. And this compares to 5% in 2015. So they explore this lack of growth in Apple digital wallet payments, which is 20% growth over 6 years is not very much. But they also highlight the fact that this year, 2021 compared to 2019, cash use declined, not a big surprise. Credit card use increased by 33%. Debit card use declined by 7%. That's a little strange, but could be that people didn't have as much money in the bank. But mobile wallet use in-store declined 26%. And in the context of that, Apple did not decline at all. In other words, their share of mobile wallet users went up. And the other interesting tidbit is that in 2015, that 6% spent $5 billion. Now 6% of Apple users spend $90 billion. So it's real money.
So they're saying $90 billion is coming through Apple Pay?
Yes.
That's quite a lot of money.
That is quite a lot of money. The question is, why is it not more successful? Is an interesting question to me.
That's my weekly grocery bill at this point, I think.
Yeah,
You must shop at Whole Foods, not Albertsons.
I do about half 50% of the time.
not just shop at Whole Foods, but have Instacart deliver it or whoever. So it ends up being another 30% on top of it. You're living the good life, eh? But what's interesting to me is why hasn't, digital wallet use become more widely adopted, and Apple in particular? For me, the phone has never been that useful, but when I got my watch, Apple fanboy that I am, although I got this one because I wanted to do heart monitoring, the Apple fanboy that I am, this actually made me use Apple Pay a lot more, didn't require me to take the phone out. So some of it is convenience and use case of the phone. It's like just as easy to take your wallet out as it is to take your phone out. But other devices like my watch, I think break through that. Your guys' thoughts?
Well,
I don't know. I'm not an Apple Watch guy. I have my phone out while I'm waiting in line at the grocery store anyway, because I'm checking my fantasy football lineup or reading The Athletic or whatever I'm doing. So it's like I already have my phone out. I actually have my card that my credit card actually in a pocket on the back of my phone. So it's like the tap to pay thing works just fine for me, and I don't think it's solving a major problem. Now, where that changes potentially is, if there's some integration with this new, the new walkout to purchase phenomenon that Amazon and others are sort of piloting, that could get me to, really start adopting it. But I don't know to what extent that's going to be tied in. Obviously, Amazon and Apple are not exactly, fraternal at this point.
Right.
So. But I don't think that the default setup for Apple Pay just isn't that compelling for me to want to use it.
So I'm probably a 1%er when it comes to Apple Pay on my phone, because I use it more than any other payment mechanism. Right? I never use cash at this point, and rarely do I take out a credit card and swipe it or put it into the card reader. It's just very. I don't have an Apple Watch. I have an Amazon Halo with it's just a pure fitness monitor. But for me, it's very easy and convenient. It's faster than a credit card. If you've got a chip, you have to put it in, wait, pull it out.
No, you don't. I have the tap to pay. Well, just hold it over for a second. Yeah.
Not all cards are NFC enabled, but yes, you're right. That's equally convenient. But there have been numerous occasions when I have, as I've said, I think on previous podcasts, where I've gone to the grocery store and my wallet is at home, because I for so long I didn't leave the house, so it's like only to go to the grocery store.
Greg, I have one critical question. Did you remember your pants?
Sometimes I don't. about 50% of the time.
Oh, okay.
No, so things have really gone to seed around here. I have to tell you. But I've gone to the grocery store and thought, shit, my wallet's back in this bowl near our front door. I have my keys, I have my phone, but it doesn't stop me because I go in and I just use the phone to pay. No harm, no foul. In the past, it had been like, oh, I've got to go back and get my wallet. So I'm a big fan of it. But I was really surprised that the number was as low as it is, although the dollars are very large.
I think the point that David brought up about his card being able to do tap to pay points out that there's this tremendous. Initially, there was an inconsistency on the terminal side. Not enough people had the correct terminals. Now that's all fixed. But now there's an inconsistency on the card side. Like some places don't take American Express, and my local credit union isn't in Apple Pay, so I have to pull out my traditional card there and stick the chip in. It's not tap to pay. So there's this inconsistency from a rural area where I still don't have Apple Pay on all my cards, and I don't even have anything like tap to pay, to my tap to pay. So I think some of the problem is that there's just not a uniform way that works all the time in every situation, and just easier to keep using what works.
I think what one interesting point that I made before we started recording is that, if I can be self-congratulatory, one of my more interesting ideas. I forget about it. It's not it's an interesting observation about the world, not interesting. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So you didn't, as you were pointing out, Mike, on the terminal side, everybody didn't take Apple Pay or didn't have the capacity to take NFC payments. They didn't have the right reader. Now, with a lot of small businesses with the Square reader, everybody went to that because they had to take credit cards, and those are also enabled to take mobile payments. The merchant problem is largely solved. I mean, I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area, so it may not be typical of every metro area in the country, but that I don't encounter places where they can't take a credit card, or they can't, mostly can't take Apple Pay.
Well, when you come for your haircut on your vacation,
Yes.
I'll show you a few places.
Well, right. You're in the areas where they're shutting down the local newspapers. So
Yes,
unfortunately.
yeah.
Okay. So the third.
Well,
and
before
final,
you go on, I just want to conclude this by, I think that I've always thought that digital payments, tap to pay, is important. The question is, will it rise from sort of relative obscurity in the future? And David says no. You say yes.
Well, I know I don't. It may never be a mainstream thing. I mean, I think the technology infrastructure that supports NFC, that tap to pay, mobile payments, whatever. I think that's in place. It sort of doesn't matter in a way whether people are tapping to pay or using their watch or using their phones. I mean, the point is convenience, and that merchants need to support convenience.
Right.
And,
although a lot of the failure of uptake was originally due to Walmart and Walgreens fighting this trend, right? And now I feel like the trend is being fought not by those folks, but maybe by the MasterCard and Visa folks with alternative products, right? So I think it's really a question of who's going to let who take a cut of what at this point.
Well, so there's a really interesting alternative discussion that we won't have today about buy now, pay later. And that whole phenomenon, that's becoming a huge thing, and it's kind of starting in some cases to supplant credit card usage online. And a logical place for that to go would be to go offline as well. But we'll see what happens with that. But it's really a big phenomenon and pretty interesting. And it's a way for merchants to get away from the credit card fees. I mean, Amazon is pushing it. They invested in Affirm because they hate the credit card fees, and a lot of merchants do. So there is no segue that I can.
Maybe you'll be able to pay just by looking at the terminal.
Yes, there we go. All right. Someday when you can tap your glasses, and that will send a payment to the terminal. That's right. So Facebook today, or depending on when you're listening to this, a few days ago, announced their long-awaited collaboration with Ray-Ban, the maker of Ray-Bans, Luxottica, and they've come out with smart glasses that do a bunch of things, capture video. I think there's a limited AR capability. You can listen to music. So it's a kind of an amalgam of features. People are sort of saying this is really just Snap Spectacles 2.0 or something, or they just copied Snap Spectacles. One of the things that they cost, I think, $299. They come in 20 different flavors. You can put prescription lenses in them. They look like normal glasses. One of the significant things is that you can take video or imagery that you capture and upload it to any of the social media platforms. It's not limited to Facebook-owned platforms, which I think is significant. And they're bending over backwards to give users reassurances about privacy. You're in control. You can
users, but how about the people in the user's field of vision?
Well, right. So
how do I, as a pedestrian walking across somebody's path, opt out of Facebook recording my image?
Well, you can't effectively because you're in a public place, right? That gets into a discussion about privacy in public places and expectations of privacy, which is like Fourth Amendment law. But it's a very valid point and an important point. But just real quickly, my reflexive reaction to this was like, oh, this is potentially dead on arrival. This is like, ha 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 ha, another failure. That Facebook has not had success with its smart screen device at home because they're in this sort of perilous position around trust. And so my instinct was to say this is going to have a similar fate, sort of on the heels of the previous versions of this, Google Glass and Snap Spectacles, which didn't really succeed. But I think this is an important product because I think it's the first set of smart glasses that look normal, and I think there are a lot of nice features here. And so I think it's in the evolution of this product. I think it's significant. I don't think that it will be a major success because Facebook is so untrusted and because people are creeped out by the idea of being photographed, wherever they may be. So now,
another
David.
counterpoint that I read on Twitter today is that in order for this device to, well, I don't know if this is the only way, but it is one way for this device to do stuff is through voice activation. And so somebody's going to have to say, Facebook, take a photo of the menu or something like that. And that is just not going to be cool ever. If you're saying that, you're around friends or whatever, like that's going to be pretty awkward and not maybe that useful. So,
well, I don't know if there's a sort of a tap function that exists. There may be. I mean, I don't know if you remember back when Google Glass was rolled out, there were all these parodies that came out, right? So you knew that the product was dead when the parodies sort of proliferated and made it really awkward to be somebody who was wearing one of these. So if that starts happening, we know that it's dead. But I think it's a significant product. We'll wait and see how successful it is.
So this morning I was doing my regular reading and I read about a smart toilet that measures your health by measuring your fecal output and your urinal output. Obviously takes privacy invasion to a whole new level.
Yes.
This sort of, for me, falls into that same category. Although more public, nonetheless, equally unnecessary. But I could be wrong.
Would you go so far as to say equally shitty, Mike?
Yeah, only assholes need them, right? Both devices. Although I was wondering on this toilet what the digital assistant would be called. I thought of maybe Poopy instead of Siri. Poopy, you think that would work? I don't know.
Poopy.
Hey, Poopy, yeah.
Poopy, flush.
Yeah, right.
Flush again.
And the killer app is daily affirmations, right? You did a good job today, Mike.
Well, so
sorry.
I no. I mean, I think this is Apple's got their glasses coming out. There will obviously be more iterations of this. I mean, I think there's something here that has a future, whether or not this particular product succeeds. And I do think the privacy questions are really vexing, difficult questions. I mean, think about all the location data that Facebook will get. I mean, this is Facebook's smartphone, essentially, right?
They will also get information on how frequently you're uploading to services other than them.
Yeah.
So they'll know who to buy or to copy a feature.
Buy and bury. For our last Near Memo. Yeah.
So you guys are both thumbs down on this product. You think it's not gonna?
I'm 2 thumbs down, but I don't know how many.
Oh yeah, I couldn't be rooting harder against a product in the market. Whether or not Mike's and my opposition is enough to doom it, I'm not sure. But
well, you are influencers, so you never know. We can start selling makeup. I think that might be a good path to profitability. I think it won't succeed because of the trust issues, but I think as a form factor, as a piece of technology, it's interesting and will spur others to do similar things. And I do think there is some role for smart glasses in the future. I just think that the privacy stuff is really problematic.
And the social stuff is problematic. David's point of view, talking to your glasses is awkward. I mean,
it's already weird enough to see people talking to their AirPods while they're out for a walk. I mean, that's already totally bizarre. So
it's psychotic, or
in Portland, it's hard to tell sometimes. Actually, yeah.
One of the interesting things that Apple did recently with the watch was they introduced grasping interface, so
gestures,
gestures. And I think that you would need something like that, that's subtle and private, that to drive this whole process, because otherwise, not only would it's a social problem. I mean, phones are a social problem, but this is even a bigger one, particularly if you're having to talk to it.
Well, I mean, it'll be very interesting to see what Apple comes up with in this context, because they usually do a better job, though not always, than other people, and undoubtedly they're aware of all of these things. Yeah. But they don't quite face the same privacy headwinds that Facebook faces. Right. But do you remember that we're at the end? But do you remember that there was a parody video, which I'll have to find, called Flutter? I think it was a parody of Twitter, but they featured a kind of mock pair of smart glasses. It was a very funny video, very, very funny video. It anticipated these smart glasses and the social awkwardness that comes with them. Anyway, all right. So once again, we come to the close of another Near Memo. We'll be back next week. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great week.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining David, Mike, and Greg. To stay on top of the latest developments in local, subscribe to our newsletter at nearmedia.co. We'll see you next week.